Madam Chair, members of the commission, we're now live.
Good evening, and welcome to the December 3rd, 2025 meeting of the Montgomery County Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Karen Burdett, and I am the chair, and I will now ask the commissioners and staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Jonathan Kaplan.
Michael Galway.
Mark Dominiani.
Jeffrey Haynes.
Commissioner Doman.
Zara Nasser.
Sandra Prather.
Laura DiPasquale, Historic Preservation Staff.
Dan Brugert, Historic Preservation Staff.
Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff.
Devin Murtha, Historic Preservation Staff.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda tonight are the historic area work permits. Have the work permits been duly advertised?
Yes, Madam Chair, they were advertised in the November 19th edition of the Washington Times.
Thank you. If anyone is here to testify for any of the cases, please give a speaker form to the staff and they will let us know that you are here to address one of the cases. We are going to begin by expediting the cases we believe can be expedited based on the staff report. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to Case 1A at 12450 Old Columbia Pike, Silver Spring? Case 1B at 17017 Georgia Avenue, Olney. Case C at 26 Columbia Avenue, Tacoma Park. Case 1E at 10913 Kenilworth Avenue. No, we're hearing that. Or is it 2?
We're hearing H, 7001 Westmoreland Avenue.
That's right. I beg your pardon. 1E at 10913 Kenilworth Avenue, Garrett Park. 1F at 10124 Meadow Neck Court, Silver Spring. 1G at 7016 Sycamore Avenue, Tacoma Park. Case 1I at 19010 Fisher Avenue, Poolsville. Case 1J at 113 Elm Avenue, Tacoma Park. 1K at 8827 Hawkins Lane, Chevy Chase. 1L at 5 East Irving Street, Chevy Chase. 1M at 4721 Dorset Avenue, Chevy Chase. 1N at 7325 Tacoma Avenue, Tacoma Park. 1O at 30 Columbia Avenue, Tacoma Park. 1P at 33 Columbia Avenue, Tacoma Park. And 1Q at 4 East Kirk Street, Chevy Chase.
Madam Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with the staff reports based upon the record before us in consideration of the recommendation of local advisory panels and including the conditions recommended by staff. Hop number 1070406 at 12450 Old Columbia Pike, Silver Spring. Hop number 1131132 at 17017 Georgia Avenue, Olney. Hop number 1139940 at 26 Columbia Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1140128 at 10913 Kenilworth Avenue, Garrett Park. Hop number 1140266 at 10124 Meadow Neck Court, Silver Spring. Hop number 1140344 at 7016 Sycamore Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1140510 at 19010 Fisher Avenue, Poolsville. Hop number 1140511 at 113 Elm Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1086808 revision at 8827 Hawkins Lane, Chevy Chase. Hop number 1140162 at 5 East Irving Street, Chevy Chase. Hop number 1140638 at 4721 Dorset Avenue, Chevy Chase. Hop pending number at 7325 Tacoma Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1102109 at 30 Columbia Avenue, Tacoma Park. Hop number 1140338 at 33 Columbia Avenue, Tacoma Park. and HOP number 1106063, revision 2 at 4 East Kirk Street, Chevy Chase.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Galway. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? If not, then the motion passes unanimously, so those cases are all approved. If you have any questions, you can speak to staff tomorrow during regular business hours. We appreciate your work to preserve your properties and in working with staff to submit easily approvable permits. Next, the first case we will be hearing tonight is item 1H at 7001 Westmoreland Avenue, Tacoma Park. Is there a staff report?
Yes, Madam Chair, there's a staff report. This is Devin Murtha for the record. This is the review for HOP number 1140550 for window removal at 7001 Westmoreland Avenue. The subject property includes a craftsman-style house that was constructed circa 1920. It is an outstanding resource within the Tacoma Park Historic District. It is subject to review under the Tacoma Park Historic District Guidelines, Chapter 24A of the Montgomery County Code, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. The house is situated on a narrow lot that fronts Westmoreland Avenue. To the north, there is a property address 7003 Westmoreland Avenue. This house is extremely close to the house on the subject property, creating a narrow side yard between the two. To the south, there is a larger property address 6912 Westmoreland, which is the former site of the Holmes house and has much more acreage. Here are some historic photos of the house taken at the time of designation. On the left, you can see the facade and south elevation of the subject property, and on the right, you can see the adjacent property at 7003 Westmoreland and a partial view of the north elevation of the subject property. The applicant proposes to remove one window from the north side elevation to accommodate an interior renovation. The opening will be infilled and clad with cedar shingles to match the existing siding. I've also included a summary of alterations to the house since designation, which include fenestration alterations to the rear of the property in 1993, installation of storm windows in 2000, and replacement of the front door in 2022. The photo on the right is a staff photo taken in 2000 showing the north elevation. At this time, staff was not able to get a complete elevation photograph due to the site constraints. The window proposed for removal is circled in red. Per the guidelines, there are two broad planning and design concepts which apply to all categories of resources in Tacoma Park. These are that the design review emphasis will be restricted to changes that are at all visible from the right-of-way, irrespective of landscaping or vegetation, and the importance of assuring that additions and other changes to existing structures act to reinforce and continue existing streetscape, landscape, and building patterns rather than impair the character of the historic district. The proposed alteration is obliquely visible from the right-of-way from certain vantage points along Westmoreland Avenue and is therefore subject to review. However, due to the proximity of the adjacent property and the setback of the house, staff finds that this visibility is extremely limited and should be reviewed with leniency. The photo on the left shows the view from the right-of-way directly in front of the subject property. The yellow arrow is pointing to where the proposed alteration is. And then the photo on the right shows a side angle looking southeast towards the north elevation. Again, the yellow arrow points to the window. Due to the narrow side yard and projecting front porch of the adjacent property, this elevation is largely obscured from view from the right-of-way. In addition to the broad planning categories, there are several specific guidelines for reviewing outstanding resources. The relevant factors for this proposal include plans for all alterations should be compatible with the resource's original design, preservation of original windows and doors, particularly those with specific architectural importance, and of original size and shape of openings is encouraged, and preservation of original building materials and use of appropriate compatible new materials is encouraged. Staff finds that the existing window is likely historic. As is typical for the period, it is a 6/1 double-hung wood window. However, staff finds that it does not have any specific architectural importance to the resource. Although the individual window proposed for removal is minimally visible from Westmoreland Avenue, staff finds that the rhythm of openings and overall appearance of the north elevation is not readily visible from the right-of-way and is largely obscured from view. It's a little difficult to get a good photo showing the visibility from the right-of-way as there's substantial vegetation that blocks this view. Staff notes that the HPC is to consider visibility in the absence of vegetation. To get a better sense of the view, I've included several aerials that show how narrow the side yard between the two properties is. Staff finds that there are few, if any, vantage points in which the elevation is visible from the right-of-way in its entirety. Staff finds that removing this window will not alter the understanding of the north elevation or the resource from the right-of-way per Chapter 24.8AB, nor will it have a meaningful impact on the streetscape per the guidelines. Per Standard 2, the removal of distinctive materials or alterations of features, spaces, and spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided. And per Standard 9, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. Staff finds that the proposed exterior elevation will not destroy any historic features that characterize the property. On a different type of resource, for example, a more classically inspired house, regular fenestration may be considered a character-defining element. However, on this craftsman house, the fenestration is already somewhat irregular, and the north and south elevations do not entirely mirror one another. Staff finds that this alteration will not impact a character-defining element of the property and is overall compatible with the already irregular fenestration. Additionally, the view of this elevation is extremely obscured, and staff finds that removing one window will have a negligible impact on the elevation as viewed from the right-of-way and on the district as a whole. Staff recommends that the HPC approve the proposal for window removal. Staff also recommended a condition that the applicant must submit accurate drawings of the north elevation, but the applicant has already complied with this prior to the meeting. That concludes this presentation, and I can take any questions now.
Do the commissioners have any questions for the staff? Commissioner Dominiani?
I have one question for staff. With regards to the accurate drawings, does this pertain to sort of 5 windows on the north elevation on the first floor of the house versus 4 as shown on the drawings we have here? I guess I'm seeing a difference between the drawing and the photo, if that's what we're talking about.
These are the most updated elevations that do reflect the accurate conditions.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we have the applicant coming forward is here, Romina Prados. If you'd like to come forward and have a seat, turn on the mic until it's green, and then you identify yourself by name and what your relationship to this project for the record, and then you'll have 7 minutes to make any sort of case that you want or explanation of what you're doing.
Okay. My name is Romina Pradas. I'm the designer and the agent representing the clients. He's here, but he didn't register, so I'm not sure if he's allowed to come here today to elaborate further.
Yes, he can come forward. And again, you'll just need to turn on your mic and identify yourself by name and relationship to the project. Thank you.
Brendan Hedblum, owner of the 7001 Westmoreland F House.
And you have 7 minutes to explain why you want to do this and how you're going to do this, and then we can ask you questions. We'll ask you questions. So.
Okay. What we're trying to achieve here is a renovation of the second floor master bathroom. Right now, the owners are struggling with use one bathroom, both of them, because it's small, and the way that the ceiling slopes also constrains the design a lot. And currently, they're using different bathrooms, so the goal is to enhance the functionality of this bathroom and create a double vanity. And we are finding it really difficult to locate it in any other walls that is not that wall where the window is. even though we've tried other layouts where the window stays, it's so much in the middle of the vanity that it really prevents a functional surface. The toilet is directly across the window, which also is not great for privacy because the window is kind of low. So we're proposing to remove it. We don't think it's going to change the historic characters as seen from the outside, but it's going to give us a more functional space. We're planning on enclosing it, insulating, and then using cedar shingles to match and paint to match.
And that's all? That's all you want to say? That's, all
I
right.
can maybe just share on mine more broadly. My wife and I bought the house in the winter of 2022 with the intention of this being our forever home. We don't plan on leaving. We love the historic nature of Tacoma Park and the feel of that space, and want to ensure that is embraced as we continue to move forward and try to make the house and the broader property as best we can to reflect the nature of Tacoma Park. And we've done a number of things to reinforce the house, including reinforcing the foundation that had Boeing when we moved in, planting I think 8+ trees at this point. And so this is really just aligned with how we want to ensure that the house moves forward with everything. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Galway.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Galway. Excuse me. My wife and I own a home in Salisbury, a 1900s house, where we did something very similar, but rather than remove the window, we actually ended up creating a wall behind the window and left the window in place. Have you guys considered that?
Yes, we have, but I think considering the nature of it being a bathroom and concerns for water moisture building up within that space, we didn't want to introduce something that could cause more damage to the house by having a gap with the window and covering the wall there as such. And so we thought removing the window would be a better way of protecting the structure and integrity of the house moving forward as well.
Also, furring out the wall would definitely not allow for 21 inches in front of the toilet. Is really that tight.
Thank you.
Commissioner Haynes?
Well, the previous commissioner took my fire, but it looks like you're furring out the wall of full wall thickness.
Right, but sorry, you're correct. And we are very tight with that furred out wall. You're right, actually, I'm getting confused. We are furring out that wall to create proper insulation. What we had done before is explore an option to just enclose the window. We tend to not do that, and we suggest homeowners not to do it because of moisture collection in the windows.
Why do you think moisture will collect if it's insulated?
The window will not be insulated because you would see the insulation across the window. It would be, the whole wall around it would be insulated.
Yeah, you'd have to clad the backside of the furring, and typically it gets painted black and it's just blacked out. So there really shouldn't be any moisture if you have a tight furring wall. There really would not be moisture transfer. And you could certainly run a waterproof membrane up the wall if you're really concerned about that.
If the board thinks that's a better look of a window being, waterproofed and painted black, we could definitely do that. We normally try to completely eliminate it, match the exterior as close as possible, and not create any opportunities for anything else later.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one. This is Chair Burdett. Did you look at removing the sashes and then infilling that within, a depth, the wall depth, but you leave the appearance of the window on the exterior and perhaps use a shutter effect or something like that?
And enclosing it on the inside?
Yeah.
Not really, but we could go for that option as well.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I think then we can give our comments and make a vote. So any comments on this? Any disagreements or?
Yeah,
Commissioner Kaplan?
Commissioner Kaplan. Yeah, I don't know what the precedent is for projects like this, but I don't want to stray too far from it. But I guess I was concerned enough about the removal of the window. I thought it merited discussion. I kind of went back and looked, and though, yeah, it isn't a real wide gap between the houses. So it's not like, the other side was a driveway, but you can see the entire elevation from the public right-of-way. And you can see the historic fenestration pattern, and this window is kind of towards the front of the house, and because there's already kind of a large interrupted plane there, this would kind of increase it all the way almost to the middle of the house, which I think would be noticeable. And so I just that's my concern with removing it.
This is Chair Burdett. I guess my thinking is that to remove the window entirely, the framing around it and everything, you are erasing it from the history of the house, as opposed to leaving something that remains that said there was an opening here, we have closed it off. And even if that's not visible on the outside, leaving that, the interior framing or the blocking for the window still in place. We do often see people coming back and working on their house and asking to do this kitchen, and they will come in and say, we tore out the gypboard and we found the old windows in the kitchen, or we did this and we found the doors. And that's really important when they come back, because then when they're wanting to make a case of we want to add something in, it makes it easier for us to agree to allow them to add it in, as opposed to adding completely new elements to these historic structures. So that was my thought about this window and the options you might have in dealing with it without completely erasing it from the history of the house. Whether that history is even still visible from the exterior, it would be visible in the future, and the sashes would actually be tucked away up in the attic someplace if you ever wanted to find yet a bigger room for the bathroom, because this is a small bathroom. But staff is correct that we can give leniency in certain situations. Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, I don't want to kill this one too much, but I agree with staff recommendation. I don't think this window is visible. I mean, it's just barely visible from the right-of-way. I agree with the staff saying it's to be removed as long as we have adequate information pertaining to how it's going to be filled in. So I don't see, I mean, all these other options are fine. We can put a fake window in there, and I've seen that done before, and that would be fine. You've come forth with a recommendation that you have thought about. Staff has reviewed it. I agree with the staff recommendation that we do away with the window. So that's where I stand.
If there are no more comments, then I call for a motion.
Okay. So I move that we approve this hop number 1140550 at 7001 Westmoreland Avenue, Tacoma Park, based upon staff's recommendations. I guess that's it. Oh, there's one condition that applicant must submit accurate drawings for the north elevation prior to issuance of the final approval documents. So based upon that, I move that we approve this.
Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Nacel, second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Are there any nays? There are 2 nays for the record.
So we have Commissioner Kaplan and Commissioner Galway as a nay, and then the rest are okay, so the motion passes 6-2. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much. And you can take what we said in, as you start work on the bathroom and the window. So good luck, and thank you for coming forward.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
taking care of your house. All right, moving forward, we now move on to preliminary 2A at 23200 Stringtown Road, Clarksburg. And can we have a refreshed staff report?
Yes, Madam Chair, just one moment.
Good evening, Dan Bruckert. This is the fourth preliminary consultation for new construction at 23200 Stringtown Road in Clarksburg. It's a contributing resource, the property is a contributing resource to the Clarksburg Historic District. The day house that's on there was constructed circa 1925, and this is to be reviewed under the Clarksburg Historic District Amendment, the Vision of Clarksburg, Montgomery County Code, Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. So the applicant proposes to construct a Clarksburg branch of the county library system. It'll be approximately 20,000 square feet. Additionally, they will extend Clarks Ridge Road through the existing right-of-way, approximately 450 feet in length, and construct other site improvements. So again, just really quickly, we'll walk through the site. This is at the intersection of Frederick Road and Stringtown Road. See the day house is the white building in front of you. Also, just want to point out, there are material samples which were requested by commissioners. They're making their way along the dais, and the commissioners can examine them and make comments or questions whenever. This is looking from Dowden's Ordinary Park and towards the day house, and the location of the library is to the right, which is to the east of the day house. And then this is looking at Stringtown Road towards the northwest on the left, and looking due west to the project area on the right. And the project area is largely overgrown, which has occurred over the last several decades. So again, I mentioned the Vision of Clarksburg, which was adopted in 1992. It analyzes character-defining features within the district, and it recognizes both a historic core and a buffer area. This is when the town center was approved and going to be built. Some of the objectives are maintaining building setbacks, the directional expression of buildings, and the relationships of front yard setbacks to buildings spacing. And again, the purpose, as laid out in the staff report, is to evaluate the massing studies that were submitted by the applicant, the building design, building material samples, and then the other items requested by the HPC related to the scaled drawings and additional information about Clarks Ridge Road. So again, the objective is to evaluate the library's design and materials to ensure the construction satisfies the objectives of the vision and is compatible with the overall character of the Clarksburg Historic District. Just to quickly run through the comments from the three preliminary consultations. In the first preliminary consultation, the HPC was uniformly supportive of constructing a library on the subject property, and the commissioners present unanimously supported the proposed location fronting Stringtown Road with the construction of Clarks Ridge Road for access to the site. Three commissioners stressed the massing of the library would be vital so as not to loom over the day house, and as one commissioner put it, the day house needed room to breathe. Commissioners encouraged the applicant to include more interior site circulation between the day house and the library from that scheme. And then one of the commissioners questioned the ability of adding vehicular access from Maryland 355, which is Frederick Road. And commissioners encouraged cleaning up of the corner of 355 and Stringtown Road to remove some of the visual clutter and make the day house more visible as one enters the historic district. And commissioners remained concerned that the day house would not be a priority for the county and encouraged the applicant team to consider a use that could be programmed to operate in tandem with the library or utilize some library function out of the day house. In the second preliminary consultation, commissioners found that the overall height of the library as proposed was appropriate, finding that its height would not loom over the day house. Comments related to the mass included, please introduce more articulation, especially on the west elevation. pushing the massing of the western portion of the library away from Stringtown Road to provide more visibility of the day house, and the opposite of shifting the massing of the stacks area on the east northward to create more of an open space or plaza in front of the library on the right side. One commissioner stated that they did not see a relationship between the proposed fenestration and the larger Clarksburg Historic District. The third preliminary consultation was focused primarily on the evaluation of the materials submitted, and which led to more questions from the commissioners, including the feasibility of breaking up the massing so the front elevation was not a single uninterrupted plane, and specific recommendations included stepping back the massing on the right side so that the front wall plane aligned with the rear wall of the interior meeting rooms. Commissioners at that time were not convinced that the materials were compatible with the character of the site and requested physical samples, which are making their way around, and revising the design to be more contextual to the surrounding historic district. So again, the site plan is left primarily unchanged. The site is accessible from Stringtown Road and the newly constructed Clarks Ridge Road, or to be constructed Clarks Ridge Road. The applicant presented 3 massing studies. There is the proposed massing, the HPC suggested massing, and then the applicant team evaluated an alternate massing study based on shifting one of the volumes and lowering the height along Stringtown Road. So some of the primary concerns for the HPC suggested plan was the loss of 14 parking spaces on site. 5 of those were underneath the proposed library, and then 9 exterior spaces. And then they commented that the shifting volumes would have added structural floor plan and layout and roof complexity, which led to it being a rejected concept. Additionally, they noted that additional stabilization would be required in front of the volume that was shifted to the rear. So the applicant also rejected their alternate proposal, which was lowering the mass on the left side at the front, and then a slight shift rearward on the right mass. This change would have also required more construction and operational challenges and was not adopted. So the changes to the building design from the previous submission include extending the parapet west, creating a roof overhang on the left side of the building. And staff notes that most design elements were included in previous iterations presented to the HPC, and that aside from the building entrance location, the design remains largely unchanged from the first preliminary consultation. So again, the material samples have made their way around. You see the white wall panels, the aluminum steel look panels, and then the exterior decking. Annotated elevation drawings were requested as part of the last staff report and by the HPC. Those were provided in this submission. And then the extension of Clarks Ridge Road, based on previous submissions from abandoned proposals, staff noted would require significant amounts of regrading. What you see here is the change in grade to accommodate Clarks Ridge Road, which includes, I believe it's an 18-foot drop on, what's the right side of the library, or the west, to the west, and then an additional 13 feet on the east side of Clarks Ridge Road. So as far as staff's findings and recommendations go, there were no renderings completed for the massing scheme recommended by the HPC at the October 2025 preliminary consultation. Staff continues to find the massing proposed does not reinforce the rural village character of the historic district, and notes that the vision of Clarksburg encourages a small-scale commercial development as a strategy to reinforce that character. Staff finds that more can be done to break up the massing and recommends the applicant explore additional massing options so the scale at the street front is more in keeping with the surrounding historic district. Schemes that alter the roof form could also be explored to further, for a compatible massing. Staff finds that the design has not dramatically changed from the previous submissions, and that the roof extension does help to reinforce the horizontal line, but does not find this to be a compatible form or massing with the district. And staff does not find that the design relates to the larger Clarksburg Historic District or the adjacent day house. Staff does not find the proposed aluminum panels to be too reflective, which was a concern voiced at the previous staff report. However, staff still does not find them to be compatible with the character of the Clarksburg Historic District. And staff finds that the materials utilized at the Hammer Hill development or adjacent commercial construction to the north, which included wood siding, standing seam metal roofs, fiber cement siding and trim, aluminum-clad windows and doors, are all more compatible with the character of the surrounding district, and notes that this building will be closer to the street and will have daily public use and interaction, and compatible material choices are critically important for the overall compatibility of the project. Staff finds that the notated plans for the space between the day house and library satisfied the requirements, the request from the HPC, and staff points out that the regrading necessary to construct Clarks Ridge Road appears to be approximately 150 feet of regrading, plus an additional 50 feet for the road itself, and notes, again, that the grade will be raised by 18 feet on the east side of the proposed road. So feedback requested as part of this preliminary consultation is regarding the completeness of the submitted massing studies, the appropriateness of the design and massing selected, the compatibility of the proposed materials in light of the samples provided, any recommended alternative materials, specific recommended revisions, and any other comments. And staff requests the HPC identify any specific materials or plans that need to be submitted with the next preliminary consultation to further evaluate the proposal. And with that, I will answer any questions that you have at this time.
Are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Doman?
This is Commissioner Doman. The samples that went around, which I had a chance to view, maybe the applicant can speak to, because I looked at them, but I'm not exactly sure where they are on the building, okay? So I see the little panel, but I don't know if that's a vertical one off to the right or it's a flat one facing the road. So I'd like to know a little bit more about where they actually go. And then there's a sample of decking. Where does the decking go?
I'm sorry. In reverse order, the decking is actually associated with the area between the building, between the library and the day house. There's a walkway that's proposed, so that's where the decking is going to go. Previously, there were notations for that space for, I believe it was Trex, and commissioners commented in light of the adopted policy that wood was required, and this is the wood that the applicants came back with. There are elevation drawings in the box of material samples, and those notate where those specific materials are. And I mean, you can refer to the renderings that were provided. The brown is the wood, and the white is the white aluminum.
Any other questions for staff? If not, the applicants can come forward. And I have here Greg Assant, Randall Hawkins, Antonio Rebello, Sue Haynes, Yixing Chen, and John Chow. And again, make sure that your mics are on and identify yourself by name and your role on this project.
While Antonio is connecting, I introduce myself. My name is Hamid Omidwa. I'm Division Chief of Building Design Construction, Department of General Services. I'm the owner.
Okay.
And good evening. I am Antonio Rebello, architect, lead designer with Grimm & Parker Architects.
Would you like to explain the changes that you've made since the last meeting? And I'd like to just say for the record, I did not attend the last meeting, but I did watch the recording of it in total.
Great. I think Dan gave a great presentation about what we submitted. In lieu of having a lot to share, maybe I should share my screen, or?
we're presenting out the PowerPoint that you had given to us earlier.
Okay.
So we're comfortable
I can-
sharing that out, or you can join the meeting and share it
I
out.
joined the meeting. I joined the meeting.
Are we sharing?
I can share my screen if you want.
You sent it to us for ease. We are happy to do whatever you would like to do. If you'd like to present it out from your screen, or you sent it to us earlier and we can.
Yes,
Why don't you go?
I'd like to present.
Yes,
from the screen.
please, go.
Yeah, thanks. So here we go. Can you see my screen? All right. Thank you. So, we have a lot to share with you this evening, so we know that the time is valuable because of the amount of the material. We'll touch on the highlights and keep the presentation moving, but we're absolutely ready to dive into any detail at the Q&A. So very quickly, the previous meetings, we have come back and we have clarified things like the vehicle path, emergency vehicle path was a question that was posted previously. We also introduced and showed the solar panels on this roof because we are working with a mandate for net zero ready from the county to do that. So we have to put about 451 solar panels on this roof. We also revised the building plans following the suggestion of the commissioners by moving the entrance to the corner. We also introduced a new plaza and a new direct access to the day house from the garage. We relocated the building entrance closest to the day house. We also revised the massing. We revised the elevations. We provided the elevations with 2D and with measurements. Also, in response to some concerns of the improvements to the day house and to the rear, which we interpreted there were some concerns there, we looked at some options for the future that could be done with that rear porch, eliminating that concrete stairs and kind of connecting that in a very gracious, elegant way. We also show the proposed materials. These materials are meant to look like wood and like panels, but they are not actual real wood, and they're not actual real metal siding, because those things are not durable in a public building that's meant to be there for 50 years and be very durable and maintenance-free. But we are showing, at the time we were showing tracks. This was previously. And then at the last meeting, there were a few requests. One of them was to lower the building at the entrance closest to the day house, studying it, stepping back to the massing to the stacks area, to the back wall. And there were also another request about studying horizontal elements in the building. Additionally, there were annotated elevations, which we have, and information about the Clarks Ridge Road, and which we have as well, and details on the rehabilitation of the day house, including the landscape plans for the middle there. So very quickly, we have a right-of-way of 60 feet that is designed per the standards that we have to for that road. We can go in detail about that later if you'd like to. Here is a zoomed-in, measured detail of the plaza in concept. So you see the connection to the library, as well as for the parking garage, as well as to the library itself. The intent is to have natural landscaping with native plants, concrete walk, and a nice wood decking that would complete that circuit so that we don't have to be putting a lot of concrete against this fragile older house in the future. So let that foundation breathe. We did take to heart the suggestion that Commissioner Haynes had about pushing the massing back. And we had actually looked at that before. We said it didn't work. We were asked, don't just say it, just show it to us why it doesn't work. And so we have the drawings here to show why it doesn't work. But then we also said, let's take a look at an alternative massing study that maybe keeps the essence of that idea and see if we can make that work. And so that's the sequence you see here. Generally, this building is possible because of this parking garage underneath it, and the building sits literally on top of this parking garage. If we start moving this, you create a lot of issues. We lose a lot of parking spaces, and the reason for being of this garage starts getting eroded. Also, functionally, on the first floor, the library starts, it's very difficult to actually start moving the mess around structurally. You add a lot of complexity to this design. And so, and when you look at the site, you start pushing it to a point where you're not taking advantages of the grades, and you would have to actually compensate by adding a lot of fill and stabilize the soil in the front of the building so water doesn't actually float to the building, which would be a disaster. And also a narrow lane at the back is a safety hazard for pedestrians and cars. So with all this, we think that this direction makes the project not feasible. So because of that, said, let's look at an alternate massing, as I just said earlier. And by lowering that front portion there and studying its ramifications. Because of the requirements of the PV panels, we have been charged to look at the PV panels on that roof, because when we put the panels on the ground, it creates severe technical and environmental issues, because there's stormwater management facilities that will be covered with these panels, and makes things very, very complicated. With that thinking, we need to put these panels on the roof. We understand it's not the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission. We understand that you don't care where these panels go. If they exist, they go anywhere. But it is a reality of this project. And so it's one that we have to live with, and can really impact tremendously what we do. So one example, if we do this alternate massing by keeping the panels on the roof, you see it on the right side, you see that we would have to create these gigantic overhangs, increasing tremendous cost to this project. Not so sure it's increasing its aesthetic qualities, but it certainly becomes a hardship to do that. But that's what this implies, because the moment you start moving with the pure shape of that roof, you start adding that. So we studied actually about 5 options that we named with letters, option A, B, C, D, and E. And we looked at its relationship with the building to the house, and what we concluded as we started moving these things, and we did this just to show how this works. And I can answer any questions you have.
Please, you can please continue with your explanation.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that, Madam Chair. Okay, so when we started looking at these options, and these were additional renderings that the staff asked us to provide, so we did from various angles. We started looking at the massing starts looking very fractured. It starts looking a little bit more like a 1980s office building, or even a little elementary school. And so because of that, we felt strongly that these, although interesting studies, and we even changed the cladding to the materials that you see, and even the fenestration design that you see there, we still think that this building, as we proposed, still respects the historic district fabric more than having a fractured building along Stringtown Road, which is basically a modern highway. And with that, we are coming back here and respectfully asking that you take a good look at this design and see its virtues. We are proposing a massing that pays attention to that corner, it does not loom over that house. It's compatible in terms of the color, in terms of the textures, and the materials, as I said earlier. So in terms of the materials, this is a publicly funded facility that must be durable and maintainable, as I said earlier, and fiscally responsible for the taxpayers over the long term. With that in mind, we have selected robust materials that align with the color, the tone, and the texture of the historic district, even if they're not literally wood or metal siding. We would greatly appreciate the Commission's clarity on what material types would be acceptable, so we can proceed confidently and responsibly with this. But we believe this works extremely well for this kind of function. So I can keep going, but I would rather, I'm already over time, so I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Haynes?
Well, thank you for the massing studies. If we could go back to slide 18.
Slide 18.
Have you looked, so if I understand your presentation, the reason this scheme isn't feasible is loss of parking spaces, supposedly added structural floor plan complexities, which I don't see that. Perhaps you can enlighten me on that. And then the grading at the front. I haven't really seen that from the site plan that you made any attempts to add any parking spaces, exterior parking spaces. Along Stringtown Road, you have parking that could be, you've got it running parallel to the road. You could do it perpendicular and get twice as many parking spaces there. Have you looked at that?
We are not allowed to park along Stringtown Road.
You're showing it on your site plan. Not I'm sorry, not Stringtown,
I thought so.
No, the new road that's going through the site.
Clark's Ridge Road?
Yes. Yes,
we-
thank you. Thank you. So,
Yeah, we
mistake.
can certainly add parking spaces along there. It, again, adds a lot of complexity to already tasked site plan and all of those things, but you are correct. That can happen.
And so maybe you're only losing six or seven spots. That seems like not a make or break situation. The narrow lane safety hazard, I mean, you still have that safety hazard even with your proposed scheme. If you had parked cars there, people have to walk behind those cars. I don't see, I mean, I get that you could be pinched up against the building, but can we not gain another foot or two on width of that road along that edge?
I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Haynes. The problem is really sight lines and visibility. Even though it may seem the same when you look at this plan, it's a lot wider when you actually have the parking spaces and you see the cars coming and you actually have space to move. On the other design, it is a safety hazard.
Understood. And then the soil stabilization, you're bringing a lot of dirt there. Anyways, the site looks like it is running from the meeting room towards the, is that the east, is that the east side? Sorry, the new road. So it's kind of naturally flowing that way. You just have to fill it. And aren't we cutting to do the parking garage? Isn't there going to be some cut there that could be used for fill?
There's a little bit of fill that's going to be needed, but not to this extent. And when you're looking at, you'd have to stabilize all that because what's happening is the water, if we do nothing, the water is going to flow to the building. So that entire thing would have to be compacted, stabilized, and moved. And the ramifications of that in terms of stormwater are severe. If we don't have to do that, we'd lose one of the reasons why we're doing the building against the berm when we're doing this.
But don't you have, that's maybe not quite the extent, but the same issue of the water flowing towards your building anyways in your scheme?
We don't think that is correct when you actually look at it closely. We are actually much higher with that retaining wall.
Yeah, I feel that, that some of these technical items could be worked out. So I'm not quite convinced that you've thoroughly disproved that this scheme can't work. Now, I appreciate the alternate scheme, and it seems that I can't, are you saying they don't work, all the schemes, the facade schemes that were rejected? What, are you rejecting it because of the solar panel requirements and you have to create this massive overhang? I don't follow why the alternate scheme doesn't work.
The ultimate scheme, the one we're proposing, works. Those alternates have challenges. One of them is that overhang, but also aesthetically, when we were looking at them, I think they just create more problem than they actually solve. And so, based on that, we are strongly suggesting and proposing that the original proposal that we have, it's not original because it's already modified, with the intersect the corner, it's already doing all the things that I think everyone here wanted to see, which is a connection closer to the day house, something that sponsors a public space between the two buildings, and the connection to the garage for people that are coming out, and even the cleaner aesthetics of the proposed option instead of this, which now it's just a conglomerate of objects and boxes. But we wanted to show you several versions of that so that you could see it for yourself and not just take our word for it and see what that does. That's why if we found this to be attractive and to be something that you'd say, oh, wow, that's great, we would totally say, we actually recommend this study D or whatever, but that's not the case. So
I may add that one of the concerns we had is in order to be able to maintain those solar panels, they need constant repair and cleaning. Then we have to create sheep ladders and whatnot in the facade to go from one roof to the other roof. And we thought that by itself makes more like a utilitarian building rather than most cooperative in terms of the scheme. So all the three schemes are here are based on the suggestions we got. We are preferring the first one compared to the other two, but they all reflect recommendations that we get from the panel.
yeah.
This is Chair Burdett. And you'll have to, again, forgive me, I wasn't at the last presentation, but can you flip to your proposal that you want us to agree to?
Sure. Do you want me to show you this
It's that one, right?
in a 3D version? I have a model if you want to see it.
This is fine, this is fine. Okay, so that's what you want us to approve. Now, first off, I want to thank you because I think what you've done with the day house, the circle, the decking, putting a porch back on the back, I think that's all very sensitive and you've done very well with this. I'm still not sure why you're pushing the big box library like this. And you said something earlier when you were describing one of the rejected options, which you said, it makes it look like an elementary school.
Right.
What's wrong with that? I mean, you guys do a lot of schools and a lot of libraries, and I'm not quite sure I understand why you think breaking down the mass from the big box to a scaled down option that would be more inviting to children, why is that a problem? And why, and looking at this, it's like that overhang is only that enormous because of the solar panels, and yet aren't you going to have a contracting company that specializes in solar panels, and you can sit there and say, get us everything we need now that we've got, and I mean, they design it and make it effective?
I can respond to that. I go
Okay.
backward. Yes, we have consultants that they are all over the county, Schindler, and we gave them all these things. We asked them for exact measurement of the solar panel. We even asked them to give us the more efficient ones so that we could reduce the numbers. We did all that. Going backward, unfortunately, when you do perspective like that in a 3D animation system, perspectives exaggerate what's in front of you and not exaggerate what's far. That overhang is exaggerated in this perspective, the way it looks. We think there's nothing wrong with any building look like any elementary school or any other school or anything, but we think that every facility requires to have its own feel and its own look and presence in the environment. This is a public library, so we think that it has to have its own stature. It's definitely, you could see at the lobby, we broke down based on what we heard from the council, the commissioners, we lowered that eyebrow around the entrance, so we lowered it down. We put more of the transparent material at the lobby. That gives it a different look and more open relationship with the thing. What we don't think it's going to help, and we didn't find, there's nothing wrong with it, but we didn't find any reason not to follow what the building asks for itself, is to unnecessarily just break it. We think the building is, regardless of those vertical elements, the building by its mass and height, it is a horizontal building. And frankly, we think if we exaggerate that horizontal with more horizontal, it's going to create a very long building that it's not needed. So therefore, we think there is a balance between all these things. If you look at this elevation, although it's from the corner, if you would have had this perspective from kind of like a middle, it would be more balanced perspective-wise. It's in balance. The amount of glass, the amount of closing, the clean roof on top of it that is not distracting. It won't show our mechanical system. It's kind of clean, and that cleanness is important to us. And we thought we responded to the core of what the aggregate of the commissioners, because we heard different things, told us, and we tried to follow that. But this is what we think. This is what we're bringing to the table. Of course, we are willing to listen to the commissioners.
Well, it looks like an aquatic center to me. Well, it could be. I mean, you could change the label or the signage and put in, the Clarksburg Swimming Center, Aquatic Center, and that would read just as well. Or even some music venue where you have a big lobby, kind of like the Strathmore is. It's just a big building, and I think your lower elevation does a disservice because, again, we have a historic property, a historic structure on this property. This is the edge of the historic district, and your lower elevation really doesn't blend with either the house or its position as the edge of the historic district. Anyhow, anybody else would like to? Commissioner Doman?
I have a question that's unrelated, but where is your HVAC units located? On the roof, or where are the condensing units located?
Very good question. It is, if you go back to the roof plan, we have if you look at that carefully on the roof, you could see that one part of the roof
it's
is
raised
a little
up.
high, and that part is a little deeper because it's on the core of the building, doesn't need high, and therefore HVAC is below that, underneath it. We try to hide it, so it's underneath those panels.
Okay, I saw this drawing, I saw that it was raised up, I didn't know why you raised it up, so you now have explained it,
And we
okay.
did this study
It's like a little
that-
camping area or something up there.
And we did this study that it's not visible from the street. So
Okay.
it's there, but if you walk on the street or you drive, you
You
won't
won't
see
see it.
anything.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Commissioner Kaplan, or?
It's questions.
Or questions, yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Yes, Commissioner Prather.
Commissioner Prather here. I wanted to go back, and I may have missed the opportunity for the day house steps. I heard you say tonight that you have developed a design or an amendment that really excited you. Could you please go back to that view?
Absolutely.
It's my understanding that according to the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, we should strive not to remove any of the historic materials. And I just wanted to better understand that again.
We're not removing anything from the house. We're just connecting the house to the library. The schemes that you may see in those sketches, don't worry about what's happening to the house, because there's no intention of changing the character of the house, removing the porch, adding another type of porch to it. It's just that we're trying to activate it from what we heard from the commissioner. And part of the activation, there are two ways of activation based on the request. One was from the lower level, after hour from parking. Of course, the depth requires some stepping in there. But the other one, we thought it's accessible is and activated even more. It's between the entrance of the library, the sidewalk, and it. And fortunately, part of it is part of the sidewalk, but part of it goes to the elevation. And for that part, that's what we call it, the decking. And that's little portion that connects to the house. Originally, we thought fiberglass material would be appropriate, but we don't mind using wood. Just one would last longer. They both look like wood. We have no objection, and we proposed wood. And you could see there was one drawing that showed a little better. I hope we have it. The feel of, okay, this one. If you could see that if you come out of the library from the right side, you join the sidewalk and then you curve and you come, and that brown section is elevated. We didn't want to fill it because we didn't want to intrude to the historical even grading of the house. So we provided this decking, which is now wood deck.
Any more questions? If not, we'll go on to our comments. Would anybody like to? Commissioner Doman.
This is Commissioner Doman. I don't want to, there's going to be a lot of comments, I presume, but I wanted to say I really like the way, the drawing that's in front of us right now, the way you move the door to the corner from the library. It makes a big curve, and I like the way you've tied the wood decking into the house. I think that's I think it really ties them two together. For the other ones, it's like a step and you had stairs going up and everything. I think this grade level, I mean, it's a little change in grade, I guess, but I think this is a big improvement. I really like the way this looks. I like the fact that you're using Ipe, okay? So it's a very nice wood. I like the way this comes around. I like this drawing, and I like the way you put the door on the corner. Other than that, other people will have things to say.
Thank you.
Commissioner Haynes?
Well, certainly I concur with Commissioner Doman that the moves that you made related to the day house, the plaza, the connection, moving the entry to the corner of the library to reinforce that connection is all very positive and makes sense to me. I guess my fundamental reaction is that, and I think I mentioned this in earlier meetings, is the building is certainly of its time, but I don't know that's of its place. This building could be anywhere, Baltimore, it could be any town, any city. It's kind of architecturally, I feel like it's the style that's current, but it doesn't really speak to rural Clarksburg community. And I think that's kind of the fundamental issue that the commission is having, or some of the commission, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but that this building, I understand you have functional requirements you got to meet, and those are vast, and I get that, and you're up against cost, and I get that as well. But this building doesn't really speak to the place, and that's really what we would like you to try and do. And whether that's through the massing, through the roof forms, that's what we were hoping, or what we were trying to lead you to go to, and we just feel like you're resisting. You're just kind of going to stuff this back at us. So I don't know what else. My suggestion of pushing the massing was all in an attempt to break down, which is a long facade along the string towns. Not necessarily bad. It does have relates to the day house and certain the roof extension, et cetera. But again, it doesn't really speak of the place, and that's kind of the heart of our consternation.
More comments? Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway, and I guess it was probably 2 reviews ago, we had started to talk about repositioning the front door towards the old historic house, and you've done so, so I appreciate that. Also, without trying to belabor the point, creating the circulation and the connection between the 2 buildings, I think is really nice. I think from an engineering standpoint, we see there's 450 panels. I don't know dimensionally whether that's a standard panel and whatnot, so I can't really, was up here trying to crunch some numbers. It looks as though you probably need as much roof area as you could possibly get if you're trying to go net zero or really achieve net zero based on a typical library of this size, but I'd love to, as you move forward, just to make sure, because if the panels, if you don't need 450, that's a criteria you're using to sort of support your concept. If you don't need that many, then there may be some flexibilities there. So just, I'd love to understand the numbers a little better. From the mechanical standpoint, I'm not sure you've got enough clearance where you've popped up the roof and sunk the mechanical equipment. I don't know what your systems are going to be, but as a mechanical engineer, I see that, and I kind of get a little squeamish thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know how I could make that work. It depends on the system. Certainly can't put a cooling tower in there. You might be able to do a VRF system, but it looks a little suspicious, so make sure that that's vetted enough that you know it's actually a plausible solution. Thank you.
Commissioner Nasser.
Just wanted to point out that, yeah, the positive moves that you made, developing the deck and connecting the 2 buildings. Unfortunately, I think the solar panels are driving the design, which is not something that should be the case. The massive roof, it actually made the building, to me, it's my opinion, but it made it actually worse. It's more massive. It feels like the overhang is actually make it, once again, in my opinion, makes it worse and feel more massive. I understand you're trying to break up the elevation with different materials, but unfortunately, I don't think it's doing it. And the alternate options that you showed, correct me if I'm wrong, but you just changed the material, kept the mass, and that was it. That was your study. To me, the breaking up the mass was more appealing. I think there's more room to improve that, but That was definitely more improved than this option. What else? I guess that's kind of it. It's just, as Commissioner Haynes mentioned, it doesn't fit here. I understand, I'm not giving you an alternative or an option here, but I think having ins and outs, adding bays with help of the material change would break up this massive building. And definitely you should not cap it with this gigantic roof. That's my comment.
Commissioner Dominiani?
Well, I'd like to start by expressing gratitude, as the other commissioners did. I think you've made an effort to connect this library to the Day House and activate that space, as you said. I think that worked very well. I actually wanted to go to your alternate massings options D and E. Preferably E, I think, is the one that's probably worth talking about. I know that it come up in previous reviews with you all, thinking about the horizontality of this big, wide, long building, but how many sort of these vernacular structures around Clarksburg do have these horizontal elements. And I think that this alternate massing E actually sort of brings forward some of that very nicely. We have a bit of a lower entrance closer to the Day House. We have some of these horizontal elements, the wider windows, the fenestration, I think, on E works better than maybe D, where they're very narrow, kind of prison-like to me, almost like arrow slits on a castle or something. I thought that these alternate massings actually do a great job. I know that there's the restrictions about solar panels on the roof. I believe it's the county's own restrictions. I wondered if, and maybe the staff can answer my question, if there's, considering that this building is in the historic district, is there a waiver from the county we could get, for example, to not achieve net zero, but instead achieve sort of 90% efficiency? That way we can buy back, in other words, some of this roof space to not have to have 450 panels, but instead only 405 or something. And then that would allow us to sort of look at some of these alternate massings. I think bringing the entrance closer to the Day House is excellent. We talked about that back in October, but I think that studying these materials a bit more as well on an alternate massing might be helpful too. I enjoyed seeing the material samples you brought forward. That was really great, very helpful. I think that the white aluminum or sort of whitish aluminum panel is really great. That to me sort of looks like a bit of the white siding and stuff you see around Clarksburg. That's great. I question though whether the tongue and groove aluminum wood piece, if that's actually the right color choice, I wonder, for this building and for Clarksburg. I know we had looked at a barn or something that had this very bright, very warm kind of orange or yellow toned wood. However, I'm not convinced that this sort of painted or dyed aluminum is quite the right color, actually, and appropriate. I know we're supposed to be commenting on the appropriateness of material. I don't think there's an alternative, of course, to this extruded aluminum, but I wonder if that color is the right one. It might be nice to study some of the alternate colors, too. Same thing with the glass, of course, too. I think that we had talked about like the reflectivity last time we were here, maybe about like the heat, the solar load kind of on heating the building. Anyway, this sort of bright blue glass versus sort of more gray glass, et cetera, I think that's going to end up making a big difference too in how these buildings end up talking to each other. So, you know, a future proposal, I think, is going to maybe dial those colors, and it'll be where we will be more able to assess the design and perhaps approve it as well. So these are my comments. I'm kind of rambling onward here, but hopefully this is helpful. And I wanted to once again reiterate our gratitude, because I think you've made great efforts towards you know, sort of addressing some of our comments. I believe there's progress being made, and yeah, hopefully by studying some of this parking and some of the solar issues and determining whether we really do need to be net zero, that could be helpful towards addressing our concerns to make this thing fit into Clarksburg rather than be a building from sort of anywhere else in the country. Thank you.
Commissioner Kaplan?
Hi there. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that, you know, this is not an easy project for you to build a large non-residential structure and somehow make it fit in with a small residential structure must be, as we're seeing, very challenging. So we do see that. I want to echo, I think, what I'm hearing here. I think everyone has good things to say about these alternatives, which you're saying aren't doable, but kind of moving the massing back in any of these examples, in addition to moving the massing back, it also kind of gives you the illusion, instead of one big structure, that it's many small structures. So it fits in more with the district that way. It also gives you an opportunity to take some of these modern design elements, which are necessary, like the big walls of glass and push them in the back. So they're not right there on the street, and it gives you an opportunity with a smaller section that's up towards the street to incorporate maybe some design elements that are more compatible with the district. So, I mean, it's a shame that you wouldn't be able to make any of these work, because it seems to be more compatible with the district than what you're proposing. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention about what you are proposing is my concern about that, that large overhang over the entrance kind of defeats the purpose of having a small entrance, because it's just kind of this big looming thing that extends towards the day house. So, yeah, I think those are all my comments.
I believe we've gotten comments from everybody on this side. Do we have anybody on this side who still needs? Commissioner Prather, would you like to give some final comments?
I do appreciate the listening and acting on some of the different views from us commissioners. I also see a graduated nod to the day house. I still am struggling with seeing a big structure next to the day house. I see workmanship, I see high quality, I see energy efficiency, but I don't see the connection with the Clarksburg district.
Thank you, Commissioner Prather. You eloquently just said what I've been thinking about, that you've heard from all of us. We all have problems with the scale of the building and the roof issue that's being driven by the solar panels. We all appreciate the sensitivity that you have shown in the design around the day house. I think what you're missing is that you're here not just because of the day house. You're here because this is in the historic district. And it has to be part of the historic district. It has to blend in with it. And it's on the edge of it, of the historic district. So your references to Clarksburg's history need to be better defined. And I think that's why we're all leaning towards the broken up massing, because even the, if you saw a building this big, it would be a butler building on a farm. And that's not really what we want to go for. We're trying to get the scale of a rural community. And this large building with the looming overhang isn't getting there. I think you really need to think about that. And you need to think about what in Clarksburg, the materials and the way those materials are used are a requirement that you need to see. And I understand that with a public building like this, you can't use wood siding. I mean, that's obvious. But you need to think about how that is all being applied. And there's nothing wrong with a building mass being broken up, so it does look like a building that would be welcoming to children or young people, and not just. I look at your chosen model option, and that could go anywhere in the country, anywhere. There's nothing about it that says Clarksburg, Maryland. And I think you need to come back and either explain to us how your building and the materials you're picking and how they're going to be applied to this building actually conform to the Clarksburg Historic District and guidelines for the Clarksburg Historic District. And unfortunately, we have had an application come through that was just across the street, and they did a very sensitive answer to their long building, and with historic references and interesting use of materials, historic materials, or materials that replicated the historic materials. we're still pushing you to do better, and give us something that will be distinctive and unique to Clarksburg and not just a library that could be used anywhere in the county, in the state, or in the country. So you've heard massing, you've heard the roof overhang, you've heard concerns with the materials and how they're used. You've heard a breakdown of the massing. I'm not sure that we disagree with some of your rejections of the pushing in and out of the massing, but there has to be some other solution. Can you push your roof back over the back parking so that it doesn't extend so dramatically to the left of your building if you need those solar cells? And we'd also like to see some calculations on your solar cells, I mean, some technical calculations. We get them from any residential application for solar panels on roofs. We get the calculations from the vendor who's installing them. And I understand you're not to the vendor point yet, but at this point, it's driving the design of this building. So we do want to see an analysis of this equipment. And we want you to think very carefully about the materials and how they're going to be used. So I think, have we addressed the concerns? Let's see. Yeah, I think we've hit it all. Because you've still got to get through us yet. Yes.
May I say something?
Yes.
I think based on what we heard from everybody, we are going to develop that alternative E that you showed. If that's the consensus of the commissioner, we are a little underbind on timing of the project, so we will choose that has broken facade, the option E that Commissioner Damiani looked at it and he liked it. Yes, we have contacted the vendors and Schindler. We have all mechanical, how to insert, put it in, all those things are done. We're going to proceed with that, and it will take our consultants about 8 weeks to generate the level of drawings that satisfies everything, that there's no place that you don't know what's going on. So we take all that into consideration, and our plan is to, in consultation with the staff, is to file for mandatory referral in January. But at the same time, we are trying to get your consensus on it to play with the timing. But definitely we will choose and pick the alternative E, which has broken facade, if that's the direction that commission is giving us tonight.
I think that's what you're hearing from us, and work with staff on the timing and what we'll need to see to get us past this hurdle.
That was a question that I had, Chair Burdett, and for the commissioners as well. You know, typically when we work on any infill project, you know, from a single-family house to a large facility, we don't typically move forward to, you know, questions about materiality or fenestration patterns until the massing and the form are baked to everybody's satisfaction. And while there's been, you know, discussion that the option E is definitely preferable, at least from what the staff is hearing, is that there still isn't quite enough, that it's better, but I didn't get that you all were saying, do that. Yeah. I was getting more that you were saying, this is better, continue to study this so that you can give additional feedback about that, because I wouldn't, for example, want the applicant team to move over the next 8 weeks to create their construction drawings based off of option E, and then you come to find that it's that it is insufficient perhaps with some of the issues with the roof form or other issues, and then they have to backtrack on that. So if the staff could just ask the commission, more specifically what you are asking the applicant to study for your next preliminary consultation, and then also for the applicant team, this may push back your submission for your mandatory referral and other timelines. And we will have, I recommend that, we can have a discussion about that offline, with the leadership team. But I guess I would just ask the commission if you could specify a little bit more what you were maybe looking for with additional massing.
Commissioner Kaplan, did you just raise your hand? Yes, oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I touched on it, but one thing you might look at is for the front part of the building, the smaller part, with the white part here, that's where you might want to kind of take a look at the rest of the district and see what kind of design elements you might be able to incorporate. And that way you can kind of leave like the big glass structure in the back and, but yeah, so I would say that.
Anybody else? Because I agree with what Commissioner Kaplan just said. It's, I mean, my take is E and D are so similar that the massing, I think at that point, they both have a similar massing, at least on Stringtown Road, that I'm not exactly even sure what the difference is between the two. So I think you're looking at D and E and using the best of both. And again, materiality can come later. We just need to get this massing and the roof line under control. But looking at the southwest view of option E, when you're looking past the day house, that library just doesn't look like a massive building. It looks like it's blending in very nicely. So I think that's something that you take back and you look at your plan and your needs and how you can make that front entry portion less overwhelming, and how you can get your solar panels as well. Are we there? Commissioner Demiani, please.
I just wanted, I was the one who said E, I think, so I wanted to maybe clarify and say, like, sort of among those presented, sort of A3, that E was sort of the most favorable in terms of what I was seeing with massing, but I don't want to suggest that that's like some final iteration from my perspective. I just wanted to clarify, I guess, that comment there. I believe that it has the sort of elements that appeal to me with regards to its massing, and again, that horizontal component. Maybe the roof overhang on the far side there is a bit much, but I just wanted to clarify that that's maybe not what I'd like to see a drawing of for schematics for later or something. In fact, it's like the elements of that to be further iterated. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, options A, B, C, D, and E are all pretty much the same massing, and it's just
Isn't the massing the same? Sorry, interrupting.
Yeah, no,
The massing is the same, it's just a change of the way you treat the
That is
elevation, correct?
yeah. So
That's my mistake. I think maybe I misinterpreted what I'm looking at with variation in materials there.
It's just the materials.
yeah, so finesse that massing to you've heard us say that we don't want that big building, we want something that relates to Clarksburg. We can work through the materials and how they're used at a later date. So we just want to get the massing worked out. And obviously as quickly as possible back through us so that we can finish this and send you on your way, and we can work with the materials at a later date, because you will be coming back. You've got the day house phase 2 as well that will have to be finessed. We like it, but we understand it's a lot more to go through. All right, are we We're good?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a big project. It's going to be a defining new structure in Clarksburg, and we appreciate how frustrating this is for you, but it's also our responsibility to make sure that it is the best that Clarksburg can have. So thank you very much for your time. All right. Moving on, we have another preliminary 2C at 10701 Keswick Street, Garrett Park. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is a staff report, Madam Chair. And before we start, though, I think Commissioner Doman had just wanted to say something really briefly.
Oh, yeah, very briefly. I did visit the house today. I did walk around on the property, and I did meet with the applicant prior to today's meeting, so I just want that on the table, so you know that I did talk with the individual. Nothing specific.
This is the staff report for the preliminary consultation at 10701 Keswick Street in Garrett Park. This is within the environmental setting of the Truett Richter House, and the house was constructed circa 1891. As a master plan site, this is to be reviewed under County Code Chapter 24A and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. So earlier this year in April, the HPC approved a HOP to subdivide the subject property to create a second buildable lot, which is approximately 1/3 of an acre, within the environmental setting of the master plan site. And then in June, the planning director approved the subdivision administratively. So the applicant proposes to construct a single-family house on the subject property. Associated tree removal, regrading, hardscaping are also proposed. An accessory structure is planned at the rear of the proposed house. But this preliminary consultation will focus primarily on evaluation of the placement, size, and massing of the new house, and we can address those others in a subsequent preliminary consultation. So you can see in the upper left, you have the full master plan site with the subject property at 10701, and then the proposed footprint of the new house located directly to the north. And then the image that you see is an undated slide from staff's collection of the Truett Richter House. So it's a heavily wooded lot. Many of the trees were planted by the current owners, and a number of them will need to be removed to accommodate the house. Just walking through the elevations quickly. This is the front, right side elevation, the left with the wraparound porch and areaway to the basement. And then the rear has a dining room bump out and a screened-in porch. So the applicant has provided comparative front elevations, show the distance separating the houses and their comparative widths, and different perspectives provided in the application materials. So again, these were included in the staff report. There is a correction that the porch extension width on the proposed construction is only 6 feet rather than 10, so that makes the house 4 feet narrower. So it'll be 50 feet wide instead of 54 feet. And then staff notes that we didn't include porches or decks with the comparison of the overall house depth. Some of that is just the architectural hierarchy of the front elevation and how porches can impact the perceived size and mass of the house. Additionally, staff wants to note that these figures are schematic based on the information provided by the applicant. And again, they're intended to provide a general comparison for the size and mass of the two buildings. And again, these don't factor in things like setbacks and topographical variations, which some of the perspectives do. Again, the applicant provided porch and roof masses that show the Truett Richter house is on the left with its sort of the house is 1890s, but the front porch and porte cochere 1920s. But what you see is the roof mass are nearly identical. The Truett Richter house has substantially more porch massing as part of its overall coverage. So staff finds that the proposed location for the house is appropriate and consistent with what was considered by both the HPC and the planning director in the subdivision. And staff finds that the footprint of the proposed house is too large to satisfy the requirements of Standard 9. The proposed house and True Richter house have nearly the same size footprints, but staff's additional concern is that the proposed construction is nearly a single uninterrupted mass. As cited in the staff report, the National Park Service recommends designing new exterior additions to historic buildings or adjacent new construction that are compatible with the historic character of the site and preserves the historic relationship between the building or buildings and the landscape, and the introduction of new construction, which is visually incompatible in terms of size, scale, massing, color, and material, or which destroys the historic relationship on the site, is not a recommended treatment. Staff additionally finds that the side gable roof of the Truett Richter house helps to shift some of the perceived mass away from the house and away from the front wall plane. It is a very tall house. And by utilizing the two shed roof forms, the full height of the proposed house is present at the front wall plane, which is a negative impact on the overall massing. Staff finds that a mid-century inspired design should have a horizontal or needs to have a horizontal orientation and a simplified roof form to better blend in with the environmental setting. The word that we used in the staff report was quieter. So staff finds the site could accommodate a house with a square footage desired by the applicant, which is approximately 3,200 square feet plus a full basement, but that the footprint needs to be changed to reduce the visual impact of the proposed house. Staff recommends that the proposed footprint be narrowed by approximately 15 to 20%. Again, that a mid-century inspired design could be constructed and still satisfy the requirements of standards 2 and 9, but the mass and design need to be simplified for a quieter design. This was not included in the staff report. Staff looked for infill examples, both within historic districts and master plan sites. What you see on the left is a house that was constructed within the environmental setting of the Bethesda Community Store. The HPC approved that in 2003. According to tax records, its square footage is 3,424 square feet. There wasn't a contemporary designed ADU in the Somerset Historic District within the environmental setting of the Siberian Cabin. It's a much smaller building, but it's still located between the subject property and the house. And then in the lower right is a house that's actually in the Garrett Park Historic District. That's at 10915 Kenilworth. It's only 26 feet wide at the front. The house is very deep, it's 63 feet deep, plus a rear deck. And at its widest, it's only 31 square feet, but it is 3,200 square feet above grade. So we have a large, narrow house with a very contemporary design, which was able to fit within the surrounding historic district within that context. Just additional considerations, I know we talked about tree removal as part of a later discussion, but the applicant proposed to remove 42 trees on the site. Their forest conservation plan, which has been submitted, requires the replanting of 16 trees as mitigation. The applicant's prepared to move forward with that. And staff notes that a house could not be constructed at the subject property without the tree removals. The applicant proposes to reconstruct the 2 existing retaining walls along Kestwick, and staff finds that the size and location proposed for the accessory structure, which is to the rear of the house, are appropriate and encourages the development of those plans. So this evening, for tonight's preliminary consultation, staff requests feedback from the HPC regarding the appropriateness of the location of the proposed house, the appropriateness of its size, the compatibility of the house mass and form, and any recommended revisions to satisfy the requisite guidance. Staff additionally requests preliminary feedback regarding the proposed tree removal, site wall construction, and comments regarding the accessory structure, if you have any at this time. And with that, I will answer any questions that you have.
Do the commissioners have any questions for staff? Commissioner Doman?
This is Commissioner Doman. The Truett Richter House is a master plan site, correct?
Correct.
Does that impose any additional requirements on the proposed house that's coming, that the applicant proposes to build? Because I mean, they're all in the historic district.
No, so it's not.
What?
This is an individually listed master plan site that is within the boundaries of the Garrett Park National Register District, which imposes no restrictions, but it is outside of the locally designated Garrett Park Historic District. So the only things, it is of Garrett Park, but it is not within Garrett Park. So the HPC is only required, or the HPC is required to apply Chapter 24A and the standards, and not any of the guidelines associated with the larger Garrett Park Historic District.
Okay, thank you.
So that's, the Truett Richter House is the context that you're evaluating the proposal.
Commissioner Prather?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Prather. I had a question about semantics, but I just want to clarify. Is it an accessory dwelling unit or accessory dwelling structure? Because those are two distinct use cases.
You mean the current proposal?
Yes.
So it's a single-family house on a newly created lot.
Okay, thank you.
The HPC approved the subdivision back in April, and there was a illustrative footprint on it at that point, but there was no, it was only in 2 dimensions.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kaplan?
So this whole block is in the National Register District,
Yes, it is.
and I think 10709 next door is a new, that's not a contributor, right?
No. So it's the surrounding area is within the National Register District, but it's not within the locally designated,
Right.
the county designated.
Yeah, but I mean, a contributor to the National Register District. I'm just wondering, just getting an idea of the block and the houses across the street.
Yeah, so,
I think they all seem to be newer houses and probably not.
right, so the surrounding area, particularly to the north and the west, is called the Richterville subdivision. The Richter of the Truett Richter House was an architect and designed a subdivision in the 1950s and 60s of all mid-century houses that are not designated at the county level.
Okay. I mean, I know we're supposed to be looking at it in the context of the Truett House. I was just trying to get a, broader context of the block. And then can you just spend a second talking about the retaining walls?
Yeah, they don't photograph very well, but you can see in the topographical lines that there is a 6-foot rise in grade from the street. They are obscured by this van here, but the narrative in the application states that they were proposing to remove them and then reinstall them.
Oh, so just kind of replace them in kind?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
This is Chair Burdett. I was not here for that April subdivision meeting. So why the dog leg back at the back of the property?
That's some of it is to avoid, there's a accessory structure in the back corner, so some of that is to avoid including the accessory structure in this newly created lot. I think there were also some sizes that they were trying to maintain as part of the existing lot to make sure that it's, I think, over an acre was part of that consideration also.
Okay, thank you. That helped. Any other questions for staff? If not, then we invite the applicant to come forward, Daniel Andrews. So sit down and make sure a mic is on, the light's green, and then identify yourself by name and your relationship to this project.
Yeah, I'm Daniel Andrews. I will be the future property owner, and I'm the project manager. And so then I have notes. Lots of
Okay,
things.
you'll have 7 minutes to.
7 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So this project was kind of inspired by, my parents and I discussed back and forth when we decided, but it's to build a single-family house for my family, and my parents live in the historical house, And so I was going for function, minimal, modern, and kind of like ease of construction were the driving tenets. And so then adding on to what Dan already presented, and a lot of your questions directed towards as well, was that I guess I didn't interpret as well going into the project as much of the strict requirements when it's an individually designated site versus a district or the historical essence post-subdivision. So once the environmental settings are set, and that we preserve those, and that a single-family house would fit. And then being the Truett Richter house, I talked to a lot of people in the neighborhood and anyone that would listen to me, and I even met with the historical preservation of Garrett Park, and they directed me more so towards Richterville and how it was the namesake of the house. And so the houses across the street were developed and built by Richter in the 1940s, and then along Oxford Street on the north side also, and then all of the ones on Weymouth. And so he kind of just went through every couple of years, he built a couple of houses. And so that was a lot of my inspiration coming into it. It was because the house itself is a late Victorian, early colonial revival kind of transitional house. And so I wanted to make a transitional design between an old style Victorian and the Richterville houses. And that was kind of what drove me in my design elements or the things that I pushed towards the architect. And so these were hand-drawn things, but they were taken off of architectural drawings where I had a light board and I put the paper on top and then I just sketched them out. So they're pretty close to scale, besides a little bit of the roof form, because I was playing with the slope in terms of how it impacted the height and I guess the massing. And so I showed this to show the historical platting by Richter. So when he bought the historical house. He lived in it for, well, rumor says like a year or two, and then his wife and him didn't like it. And so they moved into one of the new ones, and then they kept on moving until they found one that they liked the most. And they stayed in that one, and it is the one with like the butterfly roofs. So if we can go to the next slide. And so it's the one that's hand sketched, and then there's the image to the right of it. And so this was a lot of the inspiration architecturally that I took from to kind of end up in the house that I wanted to fit for my family requirements. And then, so the next slide is my image. And being a Garrett Park resident, or at least growing up in Garrett Park, it took me decades to realize why I liked it so much and why I came back now with an adult and want to raise my family there. It's the eclectic nature and how we have so many different architectural styles. And so I wanted to incorporate some of that as well, and hopefully it came off. And so I'm here today to ask for your help in terms of seeing what I would like to do and then what the requirements would be, and if there's a chance for playing with the massing or the perceived massing from the street to satisfy the requirements that you guys all follow. And I think that is all. So any questions?
Questions for the applicant, Commissioner Doman?
This is Commissioner Doman.
Yes.
Thank you for coming and your presentation. Appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to walk around the property. Have you considered rotating your house? The deal is you got the split roofs coming up, and if you rotated it 90 degrees, that would give more of a roof look to be more similar to the Truett Richter house. I mean, and also with this type of roof, it lends itself to solar collectors. There's PV systems on it, and right now you're facing, if I got this right, you're facing north and south. If you could change the orientation of it to come up with a slightly different design, and that would make it look more compatible from the street. I'm just asking if you considered any of that.
Yes, I have. I actually have a couple front iterations where I played with one half turning the roof, kind of I turned it 90 degrees, and then the whole section. But the one that I was presenting is the one that I liked the most, closest to an original design that I had drawn up. And so I can share them with you. I don't know when or
I was just,
whether I'll.
to me, it, the roof line would look better to me from the street. It would more match the Truett Richter house if it was, but that would be my observation on it.
Any more questions for Commissioner Haynes?
I'm looking at the floor plans, and the first floor plan, if I'm reading it correctly, doesn't correspond with your elevation, meaning I don't see the offset of the front wall plane. The floor plan shows it as one continuous plane. So that's one question. And then what's the space kind of in the back, in the middle of the floor plan? All the other spaces have room names, but that one, and it has no furniture. So just wondering what the functional use of that space is.
Okay. For the first question, I thought I'd put like arrows because those were architectural drawings that I didn't want to edit from the original plan that I had. And so I'd push them back, the right mass.
I see.
2 feet. And so that's where the structural elements were, and that was where my comfort level was, discussing with the architect, where I was like, I could easily push this back and then change that massing. We had the front porch, and so there'd be 10 feet between the new front porch mass and that wall to kind of create a visual separation, to break up the width that was an issue before. And then your same question is the question that my architect had. He's like, why have this big open space? It's made for entertaining. I have a large family, and I love entertaining. And so it's for a small sitting area, but also convertible to a second dining room or other space, an open space that right from the front door you can transition out to the backyard.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions for the applicant? If not, we can move on to our comments. And I just want to make you aware that there are quite a few architects setting up here, one mechanical engineer. What else have we got? Carpenter craftsman, yes. And Commissioner Prather's in real estate, correct? Yes. So you're going to get a lot of opinions, and it's all meant to help you. So would someone like to start? Commissioner Galway.
This is Commissioner Galway. I will leave the architectural elements to the architects, but a couple things. I actually have to talk a little bit about the massing. I think that I support the staff's concern about the home looking equal in size to the Truett Richter house. We've run into this in the past. It's not the first time, and from my perspective, it's not the square footage. You said it very well. You said perceived massing from the street, and I think that you don't want to be equal or larger than the existing house. So I think that's something to really think about. How can I, even though you may need the square footage, and can you make the home a little narrower and a little deeper in some way to make the house not look as beefy from the street? So think about that. I think that's important. The other thing then, in terms of on your plan, your architect showed the AC units outside between the two houses, and I would strongly encourage you, if you could find a place toward the back to put those two condensing units. I think that would be very distracting and visually add clutter to that side of the house and that side of the house that I think's most important in terms of the view from the historic home. So think about that. You did show a fireplace. I don't know if you've eliminated it or whether it hasn't been shown in the elevation, but as you start to develop that, that fireplace is going to create an element that's going to compete with the fireplace of the other home. And I think you're going to have to really think about, am I creating more problems by having it? Am I creating a situation that makes it look better and more compatible? I'm not sure I know what the answer is, but think about that as if you intend to put that fireplace there. And then the last comment, and we've run into this as well, if I look at the site plan, it looks like the home is slightly proud of both of the houses on either side. And one of the things when it comes to massing from the street that you can do, and I know you don't have a lot of property in the back, based on the site plan, but at least if you can pull the front plane of the house back, including the porch, to the point where it's not proud of either house on either side. And it's close right now. It looks like it's slightly in front of, closer to the curb than the other two homes. By setting that back, it creates less of a perception that this is the most important house. It sort of takes a back seat, if you will, to the adjacent house. And I think that's something you should kind of take a look at. Thank you.
Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, thank you. This is Commissioner Doman. The drawing, I'm looking at elevation views. And as Commissioner Galloway was mentioning, to move it back, I think would be a good idea. But you also have a lot of trees on this property. And when you see a schematic like this, it looks very like, oh my God, it's right on top of you. Whereas when you actually see the property, there's a lot of material between the house and the road, and there'll also be parking. There's a little parking area out there too. I don't think that. I mean, I think the house could be a little bit smaller. I guess that's one of our objectives here is to look at the size of the house, the mass of the house, and to me it seems big for this lot. And the other thing I just want to say is when I saw the staff report, I was really taken back by this split roof. But actually, I drove around the neighborhood and I looked at the houses across the street and the houses on Weymouth, I believe.
Weymouth, yeah.
This is not out of place. The form of the house is not out of place with the neighborhood because there's a wide variety of homes. I have nothing, I know we don't really comment on architectural styles, but I think this house would work in your neighborhood. But maybe move back a little bit and maybe a little bit narrower, I think would look better. Thank you.
Commissioner Dominiani?
Hi, thank you for the design and proposal. We appreciate, I think, as well to see how you're really open to ideas and sort of suggestions to make this all work with each other and ensure that the historic home truly is the most prominent. And so with that in mind, I wanted to comment a little bit on the location and like maybe the massing of the house. The location I think I find very well. I take Commissioner Galloway's point about sort of the front wall planes of each home and that this house should not be in front, especially because the reveal of the historic house is sort of from that oblique sideways angle, probably looking past your house as it's built up that driveway. I think that's important. One thing I thought you could consider, especially considering some of the other houses in the neighborhood, is how high your roof is when it's split like that, with the slope of that roof. Many of the other homes in the neighborhood appear to maybe have like a bit shallower of a slope, and you might be able to get away with reducing your height a little bit relative to the historic house by reducing your roof slope, or perhaps having that roof sort of rotated as we had discussed. I know that a lot of these sort of mid-century modern kind of roof forms might not have such an aggressive slope there, even when they are butterflied, so something to consider. Another thing I was noticing on your floor plan was that we could actually probably get away with narrowing the house by rotating a couple of those rooms, including the family room and a couple of the rooms behind it, and making them sort of more narrow relative to the front of the house, therefore narrowing the house while making it deeper. And I thought maybe that might make it less kind of like a large or standing out so much, and I think a more narrow house nearby the true Richter house could end up being helpful. And you appear to have room on the 2 floor plans to make that happen, depending how far back you're willing to take it. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Okay, next on the comments? Commissioner Haynes?
Thank you. I concur with the other commissioners' comments regarding house location and setting it back to the established building line. I was looking at the front elevation. Sorry, I seem to have lost them here. So I think the kind of detailing of the house, and kind of the devil's in the detailing, really will help define the character of this, which right now the elevations are kind of conceptual in nature. But the front elevation is suggesting that the front porch is more of a classically designed porch. It appears to have columns with a base and capital and a cornice line. It almost looks similar to the traditional house of the historic resource. And so, especially with the railing up there, I wouldn't do a railing unless you can get out there or you intend to go out there. If you're not, I would not. Again, this goes to the detailing of the house is going to help with this perception of the scale. And, right now we don't see any window trim. Maybe there isn't any window trim. I don't know, hard to tell. But hopefully the next round of drawings will be of more detailed so that we can get a better sense of the character of the house. I think the Commissioner Dominiani's point of the pitch of the roof, but also it's hard to tell how tall. Are you proposing cathedral ceilings on the second floor or no? Or flat ceilings in the second floor?
Flat ceilings with joists.
Yeah, so it looks like, based on your front elevation, that you could actually bring the spring point of the roof down maybe even a foot to foot and a half to kind of lower the perceived, because the main portion of the front facade has a huge area of siding with nothing up there. So it looks top-heavy in a way. So if you could bring that roof line down, that's going to help the perceived massing. And again, a building section through here would probably be really helpful. Your architect can help you with that. Same on the rear. Again, the rear elevation, the two lower, the breakfast room and the screen porch, create a kind of nice little courtyard there. That's kind of nice. But then the main house, that second floor, man, just looms over that. And you've got a lot of siding up there that's doing nothing. It's attic space. It could be brought down, and it'll be, I think, better proportion overall. And so obviously bringing the massing down a little bit, or that roof line down a little bit, will help its relationship to the historic resource, but also the house next door, which seems to be a more modest home in its scale. Yeah, so I think you're on track, but you have to focus on the details of the house, and I think shrinking it a little bit will help, but also where you spring the roof lines is going to make a difference as well.
Next on comments, Commissioner Kaplan.
Yeah, I agree with just about everything the other members and staff were saying about the massing and narrowing it. It's an interesting idea, kind of flipping it. I like how you, looking at the porch, my feeling about it was I like how you kind of take elements of the house and kind of play with them, so it's kind of the same porch, but it's asymmetrical, the whole house is asymmetrical. But I was kind of struck by the roof, because it attracts so much attention. And if I found that to be a little distracting, but it sounds like you've got some suggestions as how to remedy that. Because I guess on one hand, you've got the nearby district where something like this would fit in, but then I guess we're also looking at how it, but I guess the priority is how it fits in with the Truett House. So, yep.
Commissioner Doman, one more comment?
Commissioner Doman, could you go to page 21, which has other elevation views?
I don't have the staff report loaded up, Commissioner Doman, but.
I was looking at, this would do,
Okay.
on the, I guess it would be the right side of the house, or I guess this is the south side. There's no windows on it. It looks like to me, unless there's another drawing somewhere, the clear story up. Okay, we have some here. Okay, in the rendering, in the perspective view, it doesn't show any windows whatsoever on there. There are windows.
Yeah, that was my fault. I just played with SketchUp for one day, and that's what I made. I'd never used SketchUp before, and
Okay.
so I started with the front, sent it to Dan, be like, is this useful? Could I add some more to it?
All right.
And then we came here.
All right, there's no windows, but you do have windows on there. Okay.
Yeah, it's just not on that rendering.
It looks
that
too
3D
plain
rendering.
otherwise. All right.
No? Okay, so it looks like I'm going to get to close this out. It's been interesting. I've been thinking about what you said at the beginning, where Richter would buy like 4 lots every few years, and he'd build the 4 houses.
He bought the whole area.
Area,
He
but
subdivided it all, and then every couple years he'd build a house.
Yeah,
and then
every
went
4
around.
years he'd go around.
And his wife would move and be like, we don't like this one still, I guess, or that's
Yeah.
the story that's
Yeah,
going around.
well, that kind of makes sense, because that was a really common thing for developers and architects to do back in the 50s. They would buy 4 lots at a time and do those 4 houses, and when those had all sold and they had more capital, then they'd buy the next 4 lots on the street. And if you go around the many, many miles of mid-century modern post-war development in this area, I shouldn't even say mid-century modern, but it took place in the 50s and 60s, you will see that very clearly, that there is a growth of design, a change of design as fashions changed in architecture. And the modern mid-century look is a really interesting look, how it came to be and how it developed through, starting in basically post-war, but it started in the 30s and kept changing and shifting. And in the post-war period, it took off because it was an easy, fast, cheap, and quick way to build housing. And you can tell the minimalist versions that were the developers put up just as fast as they could. And then you would see a house like Richter's house, where it's obviously done by an architect. It's nicely done and proportioned, everything's working. And that kept going through the 50s, the 60s, and even into the 70s was kind of like the end of that. And the house you have here is more reminiscent of the 1970s than of the 1950s. And it's that steep slope of your roof that's doing that. And what everybody else has said about pulling that slope down, that's very true. It's on the mark right there, because if you look at the Richter house, his slope is much lower. I was looking at the site plan, and your house is this box, kind of like the Truett Richter house is a box, right?
Yeah.
Except most mid-century modern houses aren't boxes, aren't 2-story boxes really. they're stretched out and elongated. And the ones that were done in the 50s and 60s, kind of like the high point of mid-century modern, they were generally stretched out and long. And they may have pitched roofs, you know, like your roofs, but much lower, like the Richter roof. They might have flat roofs, but they wouldn't have the ski slope roof. That's a very late 60s, 70s thing, because you only saw that in resort areas where you had that kind of inverted V look. But I was looking at the site plan and thinking, well, it's a long, narrow site, and you're facing your parents are in the older house, right?
Correct.
So instead of a box, I was thinking what you need to do is an L with the leg of the L facing the street, and then this longer arm of the L extending back into the lot. And then you could, by stretching that out, you could have something that would look more like the Richter house, and something that would have these nice spaces and openness to them. And you have children right now?
Yeah, 4.
4, okay. How old are they?
I have a 23-year-old stepson and then 3, 11, 9,
Okay.
8.
So if you actually even divided the sleeping areas into 2 portions, where it's the master bedroom and bedrooms for the little kids up front, and then back up beyond the kitchen, back at the back of the house, would be another area for an older child or a young adult with their own bedroom and their own bath. And that way it kind of spreads things out with all the living space in between, and you'd have this nice patio also out there. And just think differently about this. I mean, there's in architecture school, and when we get into the profession, there's one rule we always live by, because they beat it into us when we're in school, and our bosses beat it into us when we get out into the office. And whatever your first idea is that you love, it's yours, it's great, it's perfect, put it aside and do more. Try again and keep working at it, because what you're going to end up at the end is not going to be anything like that first design. That first design is just that first image. And what you'll end up at will be better because you'll think it through. And I would highly recommend you do that. Play around with your plan and with the forms, and look at the houses that you like in your community, but also drive out to other parts of the county, because we have several mid-century modern historic districts now.
Yeah, he recommended Carter Rock Springs, and I drove around the whole area. And I even got to tour the Springs clubhouse because it was open.
And there are
they're very nice.
also some other areas in Aspen Hill that are, they're not designated yet. We're kind of working on a couple of them to get them. But they're kind of more akin to what you're used to in your neighborhood. And the staff could probably point you into Oak Springs is the one I'm thinking of, and there's a couple of others, which are very wooded. Oak Springs, am I saying that right? Is it Oak Springs? Okay, Oak Springs is very wooded. It's in that 60s era development, which was common in this area. Has some very lovely houses that I think you might like a lot. And it's worth just checking them out and seeing what they're like. And then, of course, we do have a couple of Frank Lloyd Wright houses in the region. Pope Leahy down in Virginia. Then there's a couple in another one on the Virginia side of the Potomac, but I don't think it's open to the public. And then there's one in Bethesda, which actually you can't see from the road. It's the Robert Llewellyn Wright house. But it's again, it's that kind of living in the forest quality to it. It's a very small house and very Frank Lloyd Wright, difficult kind of bad roof and built-in furniture, but it is that living in the woods feel to it. And you can find photographs of that around online. So I would suggest you you go back and give it another shot, because you have a nice lot and a beautiful community, and the lot's just with the trees and the woods and being with your family right there, and then the house next door. I mean, that's ideal. So if you kind of make your L and face that way, then you're communicating to your family in the other house. And it becomes a dialogue between the two houses, as opposed to, right now, your dialogue is with the street, with your house. And I think you can have a little bit more fun with it. So that's my opinion, and you can take it for what it's worth, but it's, that idea of setting a design aside and sketching a few more in your book, it works well for everybody in our profession. So I'd recommend it. So you've gotten a lot of comments, some suggestions. And you do have an architect?
Yes.
Good. And that'll be a big help, because he knows the more practical side of things. Walls and plumbing and, things that won't work. But speak with the staff. They'll write a list of everything we've talked about and give it to you. And
Can I ask some questions?
sure, be my guest.
Question about the porch. And then also ties into the relationship, because the staff was drilling into me what connects between this and the house, what connects between this and the house. And that was where the iterations led to where we are now, because I need to draw something to it, and then they wanted it to be very subservient. But being at 86 feet away, and then within a streetscape where all the other houses are at least 40 feet or wider on both sides of that dead end. And then, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, so for the porch question, I think one of you, Haynes, brought that up. I was unsure of whether to make it 2 levels or 1, how that would relate to the historical one. Would you want it to be, and in terms of the style, I wasn't sure, so I did a pared down version of what was in the historical one. What would be a preference in terms of that, if there is one? And then any speak towards this relationship and how it is perceived to does it have enough compatibility, I guess, would be, because it has distinct, I'm clear on that. In the form, following some of the recommendations that you guys had. So that's 2 parts.
As it relates to the porch itself is a architectural element that by its form relates to the Richter House. But I don't think you have to, since your architectural language is more contemporary, mid-century modern, that should also be defining the porch itself. So I don't think you put a classical porch on a mid-century modern house. But you can have a porch, and it's a matter of going back again, the detailing of it. I don't think classical columns would be appropriate for your house, given that you're trying to do modern. But so it's about the proportion of the porch should relate, even kind of the size can relate, but the language of the porch should be consistent with the rest of the house, is my point. So I personally don't think you need a railing across the top unless somebody can physically go out there. I don't think that necessarily helps you. Maybe it could be just a shallow pitched roof, but again, just the cornice of that porch already creates a horizontal line, and you'll get a shadow line from the porch structure that will help give the facade some depth, but it should read as a contemporary constructed porch in its detailing. Does that help?
Somewhat.
Well,
Yeah.
Talk to your architect.
Yeah.
He should be able to clarify that for you.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, you're showing the cornice projecting past the column. That's not really consistent with well, classical or contemporary. That's just bad, okay? So again, it comes down to these details. It looks like you're almost proposing a cornice that has maybe a crown molding on it. That's not your house. No other place on the outside of your house that I can see would have crown molding. So again, it's having the porch speak the same language as the house and not trying to be literal about relating it to, in terms of the details, the architectural language needs to be consistent with your modern house.
Okay, thank you.
I want to make sure, I may have confused you. When I was talking about a mid-century modern house like Richter's house, I meant the Richter family house at 10709 Weymouth, and not the Truett Richter house.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so you got that. All right. Because there's a wide variety of houses in the neighborhood. It really is fascinating, and I love the, it says outlandish design, it's page 73. And am I seeing the Kensington Cooperative Nursery School, or am I seeing the Dittman House? The long, one-story, dark brown thing
Not sure.
with two yellow chairs in front?
This is referencing in the staff report, so hold on, we're
Okay.
gonna take a look real quick.
Anyhow, that to me is like iconic mid-century modern, is this stretched out thing.
I believe that's the Dittman House.
Okay.
At 10709 Claremont.
Okay. I have a question for staff. So the Truett Richter house is this colonial, house. And then everything else in the neighborhood is not. Does he have to does he have to have elements from the Truett Richter house in his design, or should he be more contemporary with?
Well, so it doesn't need to have elements of, but
Okay.
it needs to be compatible with,
And address or have a
but be
dialogue.
sufficiently differentiated. And again, we don't see too many single-family houses built within the environmental setting of master plan sites where, we don't see many. I mean, the Chichester House environmental setting, which is where there's a ruin at the center and then there's a contemporary subdivision around it. So in that case, the context was not really there. So, again, the requirements are compatible with, but they're not prescriptive about how it's compatible. Differentiated from, which can be pretty easy. But also it needs to, the other challenge is it needs to be subservient to, it can't overpower.
Yeah.
So, like as identified in the staff report, we think that they can accommodate, the site can accommodate the square footage that the applicant is looking for, but just that the massing needs to be broken up in a way. The height also needs to be addressed, but those kinds of things can be changed to make the perceived massing less competitive with the house, with the historic resource.
Yeah.
So, again, I think Commissioner Haynes also talked about, not necessarily being literal, but there are other ways to do this. Some of the ways that we talked about is sort of mirroring materials, whether that's in the same treatment or orientation or a different. The Truett Richter house has a stucco ground floor and a shingle second and, third floor. So, there are lots of material choices and configurations to go from that would help to satisfy that requirement.
Thank you. That's helpful, actually, if you think about it. Because, again, the Richter House is front-facing to the street, and it's a broad, the Truett Richter House, it's a broad house, very refined, standing proud. For your house, you probably don't want to do that. You don't want it front-facing. You want it kind of to the side, so what you're facing the street with is narrower, but it's going to stretch a lot further back in the lot, and that might be a little bit of a different tack to take that might work better, especially if you want to do 2 stories. So again, it's that kind of narrowing on what faces the street, but pushing it further back. Think about it, sketch it up, talk to your architect.
Yeah, Gare Park has stricter lot requirements, and so it's only 18% for the house.
Yeah.
And so that's why like a second floor is almost essential.
Yeah.
And so that's why when you add verticality to a contemporary, I was having some issues because you want a cool roof-ish structure, but then if you want, 10-foot ceilings on the main floor or something to make it more grand, it's, yeah, that's where the issues were coming, that we're to the point we are now.
Okay, I understand. I think I think you should drive around and look at some of the other mid-century communities in Montgomery County, because there's a lot of them, a whole lot of them. Some are better than others, but there are some really interesting ones out there that are worth checking out.
Mike, can you turn your mic on real quick? Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, Holland Hills in Virginia is a very, very, very large development. That's really pretty amazing. It's probably too late for your purposes, but they have every 2 years, they have a home and garden tour, and the next one's May 2nd.
You can drive around, though, and it is probably the best mid-century subdivision in the region. It's amazing, and the houses are beautifully maintained. They're very proud of their mid-century lives in that community, and they're all young families as well. So that's one worth checking out too. All right, I think we're there. I think you've heard, the staff will give you the list of all of our comments. And I know you're sitting there kind of like overwhelmed by everything we've told you, but.
Oh, not at all.
Oh, okay, good.
That's fine.
Good. Yeah, you get a lot of comments from architects when you start letting them.
Yeah, they're less than I thought they would be.
We're losing our touch, I think. Well, thank you for coming in. We look forward to you coming back with either another preliminary, probably another preliminary would be a good idea.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on, we are going to minutes for October 22nd and November 12th. Did anybody read both of them?
This is Commissioner Dimiani. I read both minutes,
Thank you.
and they were a little complicated with some abstentions and stuff, but both actually appeared correct to my notes, and so therefore I would move that we approve the meeting minutes for October 22nd and November 12th.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Thank you. Do we have a commission item? Oh, hold on 1 minute.
He should just go, there was a plan in his, you should just copy that and modify it. It's L-shaped.
His plan looks like the stuff we see all the time.
Yeah,
Chevy Chase.
that was my reaction to it. It was like this typical builder house.
Sorry,
has nothing to do with
I got a little distracted.
Fine.
Sorry.
Commission items.
We didn't have any commission items or staff items for you tonight.
Okay, I'd like to say that tomorrow I will be giving testimony in front of the planning board for the Rose Bud House, which is up in Sandy Springs, for designation, for listing on the locational atlas and designation eventually by the county council for, on the master plan. So that's a good one. And no staff items, then
I can also say real quick, we did the straw vote for the University Boulevard corridor plan yesterday at the council, where they unanimously approved out the designation of the Romeo and Elsie Horad House that's right here on University Boulevard. They also put language back in the plan to study the Woodmore Shopping Center for future master plan designation and other language supportive of historic preservation. So that's great for us.
excellent. Good for you, congratulations. Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody, for your work on that designation as well. It's really great.
And I also heard that Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez is now the president of the council for the next coming year.
Yes, with Marilyn Balcom as the vice president. Yep.
All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. This has been a long, not that long, actually.
Thank you all. I really apologize about the lack of heat, but thank you for hanging in there.